Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to tonight's Board of Appeals hearing. Before we begin, let me introduce some members of town government that act as advisors to this board. To my left is Paul Hennings, counsel to the board. To his left is David Flynn, assistant planning director. To his left is Blaise Donadio, planner in the planning department. Now let me tell you why you're here tonight. New York State statute requires that any town that adopts zoning must also have a board of appeals to act as a relief valve so that those persons can seek relief without the expense of going to court. Town board can give Board of Appeals additional powers as special exception approvals, site plan approvals, etc. In Smithtown, the town board has given this board authority regarding certificate of existing use and some special exception uses. The most common kind of application before the board are area variances. Area variants deal with dimensions, such as lot area, frontage, height, setback, and parking spaces. New York State statute mandates the board must consider the following 5 criteria in area variances. When you come to the podium to present your application, you need to address these areas. They're posted here for you. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created. Number 2, whether the applicant has other feasible alternatives. Number 3, whether the variance is substantial. Number 4, whether an adverse impact on the environment will be created. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. The statute requires the board to balance the interests of the applicant and those of the neighborhood or community. This statute further requires that the board shall grant the minimum variance it deems necessary and adequate, and at the same time protect and the character, neighborhood, and the health, safety, and welfare of the community. The board has the power to impose reasonable conditions for granting variances. Special exception applications are different than area variances. When we have a special exception application before us, I will explain the different criteria for each. Regarding procedure, cases will be called in order that they are advertised. When your case is called, please come forward, submit your affidavits and receipts to Mr. Donadio, and you will be sworn in at the podium. You will be given the opportunity to explain to the board why you need the variance. After the applicant is done speaking, all interested parties will be given one opportunity and only one opportunity to be heard. So please organize your thoughts, keep your remarks factual that are related to the case. Then I will ask the applicant to come back to the podium to answer your concerns. The board will then close the case and reserve some decisions. After all the hearings are closed, the board will review the cases and decide some of them. Others will be reviewed at a later date. There are 3 ways to find out the results of the case. Number 1, you can wait until after the public hearing, but there's no guarantee the board will act on your case tonight. Number 2, you can call the planning department tomorrow afternoon. And number 3, applicants can wait and be notified by mail. We do have one adjournment. Case 17001, David and Susan Reef, 26 Glaymore Lane. Anyone interested in that case? That has been adjourned to November 12th. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The first case on the agenda, number 16996, Allison Botez, 132 Nichols Road, Wisconsin. Location northeast corner of Nichols Road and Gibbs Pond Road. The property is zoned R10.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a special exception. It is a permitted use if they meet all the criteria. If they meet all the criteria, the board has to approve it. If they don't meet all the criteria, they have the option of asking for variances, which he did not ask for. All right? Is there a person? Come up, please. Do you have all your affidavits and everything? Fine. Okay, you can look at this. May I have your name, please?
Allison Botez,
And your address, huh?
132 Nichols Road, Nesconset, New York, 11767.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. You want to tell us why you're here, please?
I'm here today to request a special exception for a home occupation for a CPA office. The special exception users comply and meet the general and specific standards described in the building zoning ordinance. My home occupation CPA office is incidental and secondary to the residential use of the dwelling, and there will be 2 on-site parking spaces available for clients. My home occupation CPA office will occupy 250 square feet of floor area of my residence. The business will be conducted entirely within my home by me and members of my family residing with me. My home occupation CPA office is dedicated to providing professional, personalized, reliable, and affordable tax and accounting services to small businesses and individuals in the town of Smithtown and surrounding areas. I will not carry inventory or goods for sale to customers, and therefore there is no need for on-site parking, truck loading space, or outdoor storage of supplies or finished products or any equipment. I offer remote tax service, which allows my clients to get their taxes done from the comfort of their home. My clients can complete the tax organizer online. I have a website, and scan or email, fax, or mail the completed organizer to my office. All consultations are by appointments, and there will be no more than 1 scheduled appointments per time slot. The 2 on-site parking spaces are more than sufficient to accommodate the needs of my clients. My home occupation CPA office is the only occupation conducted in my residence. My home occupation CPA office will be located in the portion of my dwelling that has an exclusive separate entry or exit. I will obtain the necessary permit for ground sign.
Thank you. Planning?
Madam Chair, we had a planning advisory report. We recommend approval. But as you know, I went on a site inspection with you and another member yesterday, Mr. Valentine, and it looked like there might be a site distance problem for people backing out of the driveway. If you approve this, we would recommend approval, subject to a condition that clears up the site distance so that people, to reduce the risk of any accidents happening of clients leaving the property.
You know what we're saying to you?
Well,
we went yesterday and we pulled into your driveway.
yes.
It was very difficult to get out of your driveway with that big bush at the end of the driveway. So I think that the recommendation, the condition would be either to cut it back or to remove it so that coming out of your driveway, there is not a problem for them to be able to see.
Absolutely no problem with that.
Okay. And gentlemen, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Come up, please. You can sit down. You can sit down, okay? Thank you. May I have your name, please?
My name is Carol Brady, and I've lived at
All right, Carol, spell your last name, honey,
B-R-A-D-Y,
and your address.
345 Gibbs Pond Road, Nesconset.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
And use the mic if you can.
Okay. I've lived on Gibbs Pond Road now for 47 years, and the corner where this CPA office is going to be, there are accidents there all the time.
Okay.
And it really, really concerns me that we're going to have more people going back and forth. It's really not good. And also, it is a residential area, and I was concerned about signs up. You know, if they're going to have a big sign saying CPA office or
They're
whatever.
not allowed to have a big
No,
sign.
okay. But I am very concerned about the traffic and the accidents.
Okay.
There all the time we have accidents there on that corner. And it's with the going to the mall, it's not good at all.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you so much. Anyone else? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Really moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Madam Chair, excuse me, the next case on the agenda, number 16997, Bola Operating LI Corp., doing business as Montauk Properties LLC and Westbury Properties LLC. The company's address is 504 New York State Route 111, Hauppauge, New York. The location of the property is the northwest corner of New York State Route 347 and New York State Route 111. The property is zoned NB. The applicants request a special exception to permit a filling station with a convenience store in NB zoning district, variance to reduce minimum distance to an existing filling station from 1,200 feet to 200 feet, increase the maximum FAR for a filling station with accessory convenience sales from 1,000 square feet to 1,200 square feet, reduce buffer to a residence district from 50 feet to 7 feet, reduce the minimum front yard on Route 111 from 50 feet to 23 feet for the proposed canopy, reduce the minimum front yard setback on Route 347 from 50 feet to 25 feet for the canopy, increase the height of a retaining wall from 6 feet to 10 feet, reduce the setback of a 10-foot-high retaining wall from the property line from 10 feet to 3 feet, reduce minimum setback of a fence to a retaining wall from 10 feet to 1 foot, increase ground sign area from 32 square feet to 59 square feet, increase the height of ground signs from 15 feet to 18 feet, and increase the number of ground signs from 1 to 2.
Shall I, Madam Chairman?
Go ahead.
Good evening, Madam Chairwoman, fellow board members, Mr. Flynn, Mr. Donadio, Council. My name is David Altman. I am with the law office of Brown and Altman LLP. Appearance is 510 Broad Hollow Road, Suite 110, Melville, New York, for the applicant. Madam Chairman, just to clarify, the applicant is Bola Operating LI. The property owners, which of course are also applicants, are Montauk Properties LLC and Westbury Properties LLC. In connection with the call of the variance relief, both on the general bulk requirements and some of the special permit criteria which are germane to the filling station application, there were a number of variances read into the record. I will note, before this evening, there was a conversation had between myself, the applicant, Harry Singh, who is the principal of Bola, who is here this evening, and Chris Tartaglia. There are a few variances, Madam Chairman, that we'd actually like to withdraw, if that's okay with the board, and I'll just read them into the record. With respect to the variance for the minimum buffer for parking, where 10 feet is required and 7 is being proposed, that is going to be withdrawn. With respect to the requested variance for the height of the proposed ground signage, where I believe 17 feet 7 inches was proposed and 15 feet is permitted, that is going to be withdrawn. With respect to the height of a retaining wall, where 6 is permitted and 10 was proposed, that is going to be withdrawn. Then there was finally a variance where the applicant needed relief for the height of the setback of the retaining wall, which was proposed at 10 feet with 1 foot provided. Bearing in mind the applicant is withdrawing the request for the 10-foot wall and going to be providing a 6-foot compliant wall, that variance would now be 6 feet proposed, 6 feet required, 1 foot proposed. Now, I'm just going to put a little bit of pedigree information into the record, Madam Chairwoman, and I'm going to turn this right over to Chris Tartaglia from High Point Engineering. He is the project civil engineer. As the board can see from the site plan that is before the board on the easel to my left, the site is rather irregularly shaped, almost hourglass in shape, and many of the variances that are before this board tonight are in fact driven by the irregular shape of the property and of course the special permit requirements. So that being said, the property is zoned NB. As the board may or may not be aware, the portion of the property, particularly the northern portion of the property, was subject to a zone change before the town board earlier this year. That zone change application was granted by the board under case number 2012-06. And for the record, I will submit into the copies of the zone change approval and the secret negative declaration which accompanied it.
Thank you so much. Give one to Dave.
That being said, I'm going to turn this now over to Mr. Tartaglia, and he can take you through the proposed site design and some of the issues related to the variances at issue.
He's not an attorney, right? He's not an attorney. May I have your name and spell your last name?
My name is Chris Tartaglia, that's Tartaglia. I'm with the firm High Point Engineering, located at 521 Conklin Street, Farmingdale, New York, 11735, and I'm appearing tonight on behalf of the applicant as the project engineer.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you so much.
What I'd like to do in testimony tonight is just walk briefly through the site plan layout, just so the board has an understanding of what is proposed. I will not get into nitty-gritty details because we do have a lot to discuss with regard to the variances. And if there are, of course, though, any questions from anybody, I will be sure to answer them about the site layout. As Mr. Altman mentioned, the property itself located on the corner of Route 347 and Route 111. It is the northwest corner. The property is currently developed with two existing buildings. One is a former service station structure, concrete block structure, about 1,800 square feet in area, and the other is a small residential home located along the northerly portion of the property. Those structures will be demolished, as will any other existing site features and improvements, and we are proposing to construct a one-story, 1,200 square foot convenience store, state-of-the-art convenience store with decorative trim and accoutrements as shown on the plan below the rendering, and also a canopy over fueling islands. The fueling islands themselves will be a total of 8, and they'll be located, centrally located in the property here. There will be a total of 16 vehicular fueling positions provided by those 8 pump islands, as they're double-sided, as is commonly noted at modern gas stations today. Looking at the site plan, the building is located along the westerly corner. As stated before, the canopy is located in the middle. The parking for the facility would be located just off to the right side of the building along the northerly lot line of the property. We are proposing 12 parking stalls, which are in conformance with the town code, requiring 1 stall per 100 square feet of building area, and we will also be providing within those 12 stalls 1 ADA accessible, fully compliant parking stall. In terms of additional site improvements, you will notice on the rendering to my left the substantial amount of green space. That represents the landscape area that is proposed. The property size is 43,249 square feet, just shy of 1 acre. The total proposed landscaping will be 15,460 square feet, which represents almost 36% of this property being landscaped. Proposed fuel tanks will be located along the northerly portion of the lot. The tanks have been located in this area such that the fuel tanker, when he comes for deliveries, will be able to sit out of the way of vehicular ingress and egress and site circulation. The proposed tanks are 15,000 gallons for regular grade gasoline, and then 1 additional 15,000 gallon tank with an 8,000 gallon compartment for high grade gasoline and a 7,000 gallon compartment for diesel fuel. There is also a loading stall proposed in compliance with town code along this area of the site here, just to the southwest of the proposed tanks. I'll just briefly touch on site access. The existing conditions on the property maintain two full movement curb cuts located along Route 111. There is also 1 full movement curb cut located on Route 347. The proposed development proposes 1 right turn in and out driveway on each roadway, 1 on Route 347, located as far from the corner as possible, and 1 on Route 111, located as north as possible away from the intersection. An application has been filed with the New York State Department of Transportation, and the plans are currently under review. We have received a comment letter, and we are addressing those comments, specifically have a meeting scheduled with the DOT to review those comments on the 23rd of this month. general site issues, one of the things that we are very proud of with this facility is the ability to create a very free and open site circulation for this facility. What I mean by that is in front of and behind the proposed canopy, we've got ample room for vehicles to circulate in either direction. In addition, the pump islands themselves are spaced accordingly to permit a passing lane in between, meaning if there are vehicles at the fueling islands being fueled, there is actually a full-width passing lane for one vehicle to pass in between them. So we do not expect site circulation issues to be an issue or a problem with this site. Relative to other site appurtenances, we are proposing state-of-the-art LED lighting, which will not protrude past the property lines. In addition to being very energy efficient, LED has a very unique capability of providing a very focused and directional beam of light downward with very little trespass outward. Obviously, the concern in lighting design is you want to light up your subject property. You don't want to light up the neighbors, and indeed that will be the case for this facility. We are proposing 2 freestanding signs, one essentially on either end of the property. There is one located just east of the Route 347 driveway in this area, and there's another located just east of the Route 111 driveway in this area. There are variances associated with these signs, which I will get into in a moment. That's really the overview. I didn't want to get into too much detail, but again, if there are any questions on the layout that come up now or later, I'll be certainly happy to answer them. What I'd like to do is just run through the variances now, if I can. And specifically, just to reiterate what Mr. Altman had said, I want to just confirm what exactly we have ameliorated with the proposed changes to the plan in terms of reduction of variances. The first item that was up for variance is reduce the minimum parking buffer adjacent to residential districts from 10 feet to 7 feet. We are again withdrawing that request for variance because we're going to move the parking, which was the offending site appurtenance, south in a direction of about 3 feet or a little over 3 feet to create a 10-foot setback to parking. Again, that will eliminate the need for this variance. We've also eliminated the request for the increase in ground sign height from 18 feet, where 15 feet is provided. We are going to comply with the 15-foot height requirement, therefore we wish to remove this variance. The next two are actually related. I'll read them both at the same time and then explain how we've changed the variance. The first variance item was increase the maximum height of retaining wall from 6 feet to 10 feet. The second variance was permit setback of a 10-foot high retaining wall 3 feet from the property line. As Mr. Altman mentioned, we're going to modify the proposed retaining wall design to consist of a double-tiered design, such that there will be a lower wall 3 feet tall, which will be located 3 feet from the property line in compliance with the code, and then there will be a second wall 6 feet tall, located 6 feet back from the 3 feet wall, and the 6-foot height complies with the required height of retaining walls. So those two variances will be eliminated. The final variance that has been impacted, though not completely ameliorated, is the variance which read, decrease the minimum setback of a fence from a 10-foot high retaining wall from 10 feet to 1 foot. Again, just in case that's confusing, because it seems a little confusing, is the code mandates that the fence that is located on top of a retaining wall needs to be set back the same height of the retaining wall. That variance has changed as follows. With the 6-foot high retaining wall, the variance should now be requested as decrease the minimum setback of a fence from a 6-foot high retaining wall from 6 feet to 1 foot. In other words, we are still requesting the same 1-foot setback, but we are only required to be 6-foot setback from that wall, not 10 foot. We did receive a memo from planning staff, and I'd like to follow along in order of the issues addressed in that planning memo because it follows first a description of and a discussion of the special exception variances which are required, and then I will finish up with the variances from bulk that are required. First, the special exception variances. Code section 322-94G9 General special exception standard regarding adequate buffer yards and screening walls shall be provided as necessary. Instead of responding in detail to that, I will discuss further down when we talk about buffers to this specific item. Second special exception variance. Code section 333-82 C7D, which reads, a densely planted buffer area at least 50 feet deep shall be maintained adjacent to residence district or uses. Now for this, I need to go to my boards and show you an exhibit which I think is going to be a very common theme throughout my testimony tonight.
Am I confused here? It says 50 to 70 for the buffer. He's saying 10 to 7.
What this document shows on the board, what this exhibit shows in red, if the board can see it and the members of the audience, the red highlighted area reflects the required 50-foot buffer distance which would be required on this property. Again, the residential
Right.
zoning is to our west and to the north. The red shaded area is 50 foot deep. The green shaded area represents the 50-foot front yard setback that this lot is subject to. As I've mentioned and as Mr. Altman has mentioned, we do have a quite irregularly shaped parcel, and with that, quite a big pinch point here in the middle. What this document represents is the unshaded area is essentially what we would call our buildable envelope. I'm sure it's hard to see. Even when it's close up, it's hard to see because that area only represents approximately 6,000 square feet, representing roughly 13% of this lot actually buildable if we were to comply with standards. So not to be repetitive or repetitious, but I'm going to refer back to this diagram in a lot of my testimony tonight in justifying the need for these variances. Just to explain a little bit about the buffer. The buffer itself is 10 feet wide at its smallest point, and that smallest point is again located where the parking stalls are. I'm going to go back to the site plan just so I can explain this.
Take the mic with you. Oh, okay.
So where the parking stalls are located is where we've got our most intense buffer relaxation required. Again, as mentioned earlier, that was originally proposed as 7 feet. We're going to increase that to 10 feet to comply with the parking setback. However, we still do not make or provide the 50 feet required. With that, I'd like to explain a little bit more, though, about the buffers we are providing. Adjacent to the building, on the west side of the site to the north of the building, we're providing a full 20-foot setback to that building, so the buffer itself is 20 feet wide in this area here. Along the west side of the building, we are providing a 12-foot wide buffer area. Perhaps, though, the most important buffer, I believe, that we are providing is up on the northerly part of the site. Interestingly enough, it is where the professional office is located next to us, where we do not necessarily have to provide that buffer. However, in this direction here, which is bordering the residential property, we're providing a buffer width of roughly 50 feet wide by 158 foot deep. Now, essentially, that's 50 feet in this direction, plus or minus, by the full length of that property line. That's being left natural and undeveloped. So while we do need relief from the 50-foot buffer, we are providing it as where is possible and where is able to not impact the development of the site. Essentially, just as a conclusion, given all of the site constraints, the reduction in buffer widths as requested are unavoidable given the constraints of the property. The next special permit requirement, section 322-82C, 7D. Waive the requirement of minimum distance from existing filling station from 1,200 to 200 feet. On the aerial photo here I've provided, we have an existing HES station located approximately 200 feet to our northeast, across the other side of Route 111. There are multiple instances in the town where gasoline stations are closer than 1,200 feet. I'd like to share with you several of those now in justification for the request for this variance. The intersection of Middle Country Road and Edgewood Avenue in Smithtown. On the northwest corner, there is a pit stop gasoline station on the northwest corner and a Gulf station on the southwest corner. So in terms of distance, the distance across that intersection may be 80 or 90 feet. Interestingly enough, with this intersection, there's also a third station located roughly 500 feet west of the intersection on Middle Country Road. On the south side of the road, it actually fronts the 84 Lumber property. That service station has closed and is no longer in operation. However, that said, the tanks are still in the ground, the canopy is still there, and the building is still intact. Another example, one which this board is probably very familiar with. The Gulf Station, also known as Gas Heaven, located at 2088 Jericho Turnpike in Comac, also has a service station by the name of Bob's Citgo Station, located approximately 1,000 feet to the east on the north side of Middle Country Road. Also, as the board is aware, there is a Hess station that is proposed roughly 500 feet to the west of this Gulf Station, of the Gulf Gas Haven Station, that is located at 2088 Jericho Turnpike. That station has not yet been constructed. We understand they are still pursuing approvals, but we do believe that the necessary variance for proximity to existing stations has been granted by this board. The final example that we have is on the westbound LIE service road at Comac Road. There's a shell on the northeast corner of that intersection. Now, there's a mobile station directly across that intersection to the west, understanding that indeed that mobile station is located within the town of Huntington jurisdiction, not within the town of Smithtown, but notwithstanding, those stations are still roughly probably about 120 to 130 feet apart. Based on this information, it is our assertion that this waiver is not considered excessive or out of character for the township or for the area, given the existence of the other multiple situations within the town. The final item, which is a variance from the special permit provisions, is to waive the requirement for maximum floor area from 1,000 square feet currently permitted to 1,200 square feet. We're seeking a 20% increase in floor area. Again, as the board knows, there are several existing operating other facilities which have been approved for a little over 1,200 square feet, namely several of the Hess facilities, including the one just opposite the subject station. I think as the board and the residents and the community overall have noted, that this minor increase in floor area over what is permitted has not caused any detrimental effects to the community nor to the public. This application will similarly not cause any impact if the variance is granted, and frankly, the extra 200 square feet only allows customers a greater selection of products for purchase. The last item, which we'll go through in more detail in the bulk requirements, is Section 322-82C7H. Waive the requirements that signs comply with dimensional requirements of the zoning ordinance. As discussed, we are no longer seeking a height variance for our signs, and the area variances we are seeking will be discussed later in the presentation. So what I'd like to do now is go through the variances that we are requesting and go through the 5 points. As was mentioned in the memo from planning, there was a recommendation from Mr. DeRubius to ensure that we review each of the 5 points for the board, which we will do now. Madam Chair has read into the record the area variance considerations, so I will not repeat them for the sake of brevity. First variance which we'll review, and this is from the table of dimensional regulations. Reduce the minimum front yard setback from 50 feet to 23.5 feet for the proposed canopy, and similarly reduce the front yard setback from 50 feet to 25 feet along Route 347. First test, whether the grant of the variance will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or create a detriment to the properties. In terms of the character of the area, there are several specific issues which I wish to put on record. The existing residential home, which is located on the subject property along Route 111, is set back 14.8 feet from Route 111. The doctor's office adjoining us to the north has a setback of roughly 20 feet from Route 111. And we'll be doing a lot of comparisons to the Hess station across the street. That canopy is located roughly 20 feet from Route 111. Again, by comparison, our setbacks are 23.5 feet to Route 111 and 25. Our setbacks all exceed the examples that I've just given for the adjoining properties. As such, we do not believe that the granting of the setback variances for the front yards will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, nor will they create a detriment to the nearby properties. Another thing to mention with the canopy, as far as front yard setback, it is a roof structure without walls. So there is no concern about sight lines or site visibility. There is clear visibility from beneath. Test number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible to pursue other than an area variances. As discussed previously, and I'll keep going back to this, the shape and limited depth of this property do not allow adherence to the 50-foot front yard setback. We cannot locate a canopy and have adequate circulation around the pump islands in conformity with this setback. As such, we conclude the development of the subject property cannot be achieved by any other means other than this area variance. Test 3, whether the variance requested is substantial. As was indicated, while the comparison numerically of 50 feet against the 23 and 25-foot setbacks does appear to be rather large and substantial, the fact remains that the property is unable to be feasibly developed with adhering to the setback and buffer requirements, again, due to the irregular shape and depth. Therefore, it is our opinion that the request is not substantial. Excuse me. Item 4, whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or district. This test is a lot like test number 1, so not to be repetitive, we'll just say that, as has been discussed, the proposed front yard setbacks are in keeping with the setbacks of the structures that are nearby and on the nearby properties and on the subject property, so there is no anticipated impact to the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Final test number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created, which consideration shall be relevant to the determination of the Board of Appeals, but shall not necessarily preclude the grant of the area variance. As mentioned previously, the constraints provided by this property's narrow depth and shape would result in similar variances being sought for virtually any other type of development, not just a gasoline service station. Therefore, it is our opinion that the difficulty is not self-created, it is actually created by the irregular shape and characteristics of the property. That's only one variance. I'm going to keep going. Code Section 322-69B1, increase in maximum number of ground signs from 1 to 2. Code section reads, for the record, not more than 1 permanent ground sign shall be permitted per site, except at sites over 5 acres shall be permitted 2 such signs. At just under 1 acre, we clearly don't make that criteria, so a variance is needed. Analysis of the 5 points. Whether the grant will cause an undesirable change in the neighborhood. Our response. The ability to clearly and accurately display product pricing to motorists on a nearby roadway network is a fundamental necessity for modern-day gas stations. Advance notice of both the existence of a gasoline station and its prices allow motorists to effectively make the decision to enter the station and maneuver into the site driveways in a safe manner. The subject property has approximately 400 linear feet of frontage on both Route 111 and 347 combined. These extended frontage lengths make it virtually impossible to effectively display the product prices to motorists at both driveways. Both driveways are separated by almost 300 feet, and they serve 2 different traffic streams. So there is no way to display and transmit the message of the pricing and the grade of gasoline with only 1 ground sign on a property with this much frontage. As proposed, locating the ground sign at each driveway will effectively convey to drivers the necessary information they need to make a decision to enter the site safely. It is also noted that the provision of multiple ground signs is a characteristic of the surrounding area for gas stations fronting 1 or more major thoroughfare. For example, the Hess station has a identification and price sign on Route 347 and also has an identification sign on Route 111. As such, granting of this variance will not cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or detriment to the nearby properties. Test 2, whether the benefit can be achieved by some method other than an area variance. As just testified to and discussed, Due to the separation of the driveways and the lengthy frontage of the property, we cannot feasibly identify this site and have a safe access condition for our customers without providing the signs as proposed. As such, the benefits sought cannot be achieved by any other method other than the variance. Test 3, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Again, I go back to the enlarged frontage and the fact that we're proposing only 2 signs, 1 per roadway frontage. So while indeed we are requesting for a additional sign, total of 2 where 1 is proposed, clearly the fact that the signs are separated by over 300 feet, we believe that the requested area variance for the additional sign is not substantial. 4th test, whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Again, this is a lot like consideration number 1, and the answer is very similar, that the provision of the ground sign and the proximity to each driveway provides motorists with necessary information to make safe movements into the site. And again, we point to the Hess station, which is nearby, in having 2 total signs as emblematic of why we are also requesting 2, because we front on 2 major roadways. Last item is whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. Subject property contains, again, 400 lineal feet of frontage. The location of the driveways, located as far as possible from the intersection, mandate the installation of signs to direct drivers as to where those access points are and to be able to get into them safely. Therefore, the need for the additional ground sign is not a self-created hardship, rather one that's created by the dimensions and boundaries of the property. Next item is increase in maximum ground sign area from 32 square feet to 59 square feet. And I refer to the table of sign regulations here for this criteria. Again, analyzing the 5 points. Whether the grant of the variance will cause an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood, create a detriment to nearby properties. As stated earlier, motorists generally have 2 decisions to make before they decide to patronize a gas station. The first one is generally the price. The second one also, if they're a credit card holder or loyal to one brand or another, is the brand of the gasoline. The freestanding sign as proposed will only indicate the brand of the gas on the top, as located on the exhibit down here, and the price of the gasoline. The proposed sign area that we have, again, as mentioned, is 59 square feet. Each sign is proposed at 59 square feet. In terms of a comparison, again, we've been comparing ourselves to the Hess. The sign that Hess has located along Route 347, as measured, contains roughly 64 square feet in area, so it's about 5 square feet larger than the one sign that we proposed. Though in fairness, the secondary sign that Hess has on Route 111 is a monument-style sign which contains roughly 32 square feet in area, so that sign does appear to comply with the area requirement. Whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible for the applicant to pursue other than an area variance. Test number 2. As indicated previously, we believe the sizes of the proposed signs are in keeping with others in the area and are necessary for the safety for the motorists and customers. Therefore, there is no other method which can be pursued to achieve the desired benefit. Third test, whether the requested area variance is substantial. Although in a comparison of the allowable size of 32 square feet allowable to the 59 square feet proposed appears to be numerically significant. However, again, comparing ourselves to the signs in the area, particularly the one at the Hess station, our proposed signs are roughly the same size and area to that which is already existing on Route 111, on Route 347 for Hess. Therefore, it is our opinion that this request is not substantial. Test 4, whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Again, we refer to the nearby Hess station freestanding logo sign. Similar size, similar answer. We do not believe that granting the variance will have any adverse impacts. Final test, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. As discussed previously, gasoline stations must have signage that is visible in order for passing motorists to be able to see them, make the decision to turn into the facility, and do so in a safe manner. In order to adequately display the necessary information to our potential customers, the proposed signs in their area and location are required. Therefore, we believe the difficulty is not self-created. Almost done. The last item is decrease the minimum setback of a fence from a 6-foot high retaining wall from 6 foot required to 1 foot provided. 5 points. Point number 1, whether the grant of the variance will cause an undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood or will create a detriment to nearby properties. As mentioned earlier, we'll be providing tiered retaining walls to avoid variances associated with the setbacks and height of these walls. However, the narrow depth of this property reduces the ability to space the proposed fence away from the upper wall, as that would now encroach on the required circulation area between the pump islands and the northerly part of the site. The walls and the fence will both be attractive and decorative and will be installed pursuant to town requirements, engineering department, and any other applicable codes and guidelines. So we feel there will be no undesirable change to the character of the neighborhood or the surrounding properties. Test number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some method feasible to pursue other than an area variance. As stated previously, again, the narrow depth and odd shape of this property would not allow us to locate the fence any further south into the property without negatively affecting required safe circulation areas for vehicles. We therefore conclude the benefits sought cannot be achieved by any other method. Whether the requested area variance is substantial. We believe the variance requested is not substantial because the primary purpose of the fence is to provide fall protection for those patrons, customers, employees, or any personnel which are on our site on the high side of the wall. Whether that fence is set back 1 foot or 6 feet, it will still provide its necessary purpose for fall protection. Therefore, we do not believe that the request is substantial. Test number 4, whether the grant of the variance will have an adverse effect on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. As stated previously, we do not believe the granting of this variance will have an adverse impact for the reasons already discussed. Final point, whether the alleged difficulty is self-created. As discussed previously, the shallow depth and irregular shape of the property is the primary cause for the need to seek this variance. Therefore, we feel the difficulty is not self-created. That concludes my presentation. I am here to answer any questions.
Planning, do you want to start?
I have 4, excuse me, 4 comments, Madam Chair. As excuse me, as you know, a filling station is an intensive use from a traffic standpoint. Historically, the board had not approved special exceptions to expand filling stations unless there was a traffic study that demonstrated to the board's satisfaction that the special exception would comply with the requirement that special exceptions not create traffic congestion or traffic safety hazards. It would seem in this situation that the proposal would exacerbate congestion and safety problems. First, any filling station generates more traffic per acre than almost any use except for a convenience store. In this situation, the filling station has 16 pump dispensers, and as you know, most have 4 and some have 6. According to the Institute of Transportation Engineers Trip Generation Manual, the highest correlation between trip generation and a factor is the number of pump dispensers. In other words, the more pump dispensers, the more traffic that gets created. So we would recommend that the board not approve a special exception for a filling station here unless you get a traffic study where you feel that you could certify that this will not increase traffic congestion or traffic safety problems. Now, I would add to that, or I would qualify that, virtually any use creates traffic congestion. I think the question before the Board of Appeals is not whether it creates congestion, but does it create more congestion than uses permitted as a matter of right. This is a special permit use. Special permit use is one that's permitted provided that all special exception standards are met. And we would submit that without evidence demonstrating that that standard is met, that it's not. Secondly, at this point in time, the plan submitted with the application does not comply with DOT's latest letter that we saw that said that there should be a right turn in only from Route 111 and a right turn out only from to the bypass. What planning would recommend is that this needs to be resolved, I think, before the board makes a decision. The third point is that when you look at the plan up there, the parking stalls by the building, south of the building, look like they're really too close to the curb cut from a safety standpoint. People backing out of those stalls would get in the way of people entering and exiting the property. The last point has to do with the buffers. It's fair to say, I mean, it's true, what Mr. Tartaglia said is true, that it's extraordinarily difficult to develop the property for anything in full compliance with the zoning ordinance. However, the proposed reduction in buffers pretty clearly impacts the residential property to the northwest. Going from a 50-foot buffer to, I believe it's now 10 feet, is an 80% reduction in the requirement. It doesn't seem fair to the neighbor to have the buffer shrunk by 80% for one of the most intensive land uses that a town could have. I understand that they're between a rock and a hard place, with a 50-foot setback in the front and a 50-foot buffer requirement in the back leaves something like the slit of an envelope in which to put a building. But we would recommend going back to the drawing board and at least trying to provide a larger buffer, something close to the requirement. In other situations in the town, there are so many where filling stations do comply, if they're halfway new, they do comply with the 50-foot buffer requirement. And those that are not in compliance typically date from the 1950s. And I don't think it's right that in this day and age a filling station be established with such a small buffer. One other point I would say, I'd like to make it for the record that yesterday in the field you asked the planning department to look and see whether this property could be developed without any variances, and I responded by email, and I'd like the email to be part of the record, and I said that it could. But I'd like to further say that I'm mistaken. The email's wrong.
Okay.
I made a mistake in the scale of the drawing. Mr. Tartaglia's drawing on the other side of the easel is more accurate. As you can see, between the red and the green, the triangles are very small. And there's no way you could put in a building and canopies in those places. Thank you.
Gentlemen, do you have any other questions?
I had a question.
I do too.
I guess space between the islands that you had that you said provides for adequate site circulation, is that a requirement of filling stations, or is that something that's just as a practical matter that you always put in?
It's actually not a requirement. In fact, it's not a luxury that we rarely have in the design of service stations because of the unique shape of this property being much longer than it is deep, and the pump island spacing is commensurate with that length of the property. We actually have the luxury of providing a 30-foot spacing, which will allow, again, 2 vehicles to be fueling on at either side of the pumps, and another vehicle to drive through unfettered.
The reason I asked the question is that if you were able to eliminate that space in there, it would shrink that massive canopy, and it would also pull it further back. By virtue of the fact that it would pull it closer to the center, would also bring it further away from the property line as well.
Excellent point. However, you know what it would increase? It would increase the buffer where we don't need it along the northerly lot line, which is not residentially zoned. In other words, the canopy would shrink this way in a north-south direction. It would not help the buffers 1 iota to the north, which is the one that we're concerned about.
Towards the middle.
That's correct. That's correct. So the spacing that we're talking about between the islands as the vehicles will circulate is in essentially an east-west direction. By shrinking the canopy in a north-south direction, it does not buy us 1 additional foot along the buffer area.
Right.
One of the
Now,
things.
had you also thought about possibly moving the canopy back and shifting your parking to the front of the site?
I will tell you this. This project has been in my office for about 18 months. The first 3 to 4 months we spent with the applicant beating up different layouts, trying to get something which would both function from a traffic safety perspective, service the customers on what we know are going to be and are already 2 very busy roadways. And I can say, with my firm's specialty being gas station design, that this is one of the best layouts we have ever configured. I would not want to change it. I don't want to fix what isn't broken. I realize there are variances associated with this. However, it's because of the shape and the size of the property. The proposed development is outstanding, in my opinion.
The only concern I have is I know that those lots behind aren't developed currently. If they do get developed, what is a problem for you now becomes a problem for them later.
Well, I do have a response to that, and it is a great question. There are some site constraints that I think might help to mitigate the development of that property, if I may. Along the northerly boundary line, we've already got a fairly significant slope heading roughly from 2/3 of the way into our site straight north. There's a very substantial slope downward as we head to the north. That slope continues between 25 and 40 feet from our lot line, meaning that that same heavy slope will continue from here 40 feet in. What that means is that unless they wish to erect very expensive retaining walls and do a lot of filling on their side, there will probably, can't say for certain, but the development of that property would likely leave this property right up against our border as existing and vegetated because it's on a very steep slope. Again, don't know for sure what somebody's going to do, but as a site planner and an engineer, I would not attempt to go develop in that area. The other issue has to do with the zoning of that property.
Zone R21?
R6. Total area of that property is 7 acres, but R6 district requires a minimum lot area per dwelling unit of 7,500 square feet. So based on this density requirement, the 7-acre property can hold 40 dwelling units. Looking at that 7-acre property, I think it would be foolhardy for anybody to develop that part of the site, which is not accessible to any roadways, by trying to put their building or structure or home that close to our property line. So just like we have some site constraints, which I believe are very unique and causing the need for the variances, the development of that property will also have very similar constraints. And in my opinion, I don't believe that that will be a problem for the adjoining developer.
I think also for R6, at least my view of the bulk requirement is they require a 50-yard side yard and rear yard setback as well. So, right. So they're going to have to work off a 50-foot buffer, and as Mr. Tartaglia indicated, given the proximity to our site, as well as to Route 111 and 347, assuming that property is, in fact, developed for townhouse development, arguably the developer is going to move that the location of the residences somewhat distant from our use as well as the roadways.
Any other questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one question. Can I see, do you have a color rendering of the canopy and the signs?
Yes, ma'am.
Which we can't see.
Of course, the canopy rendering is on one side, so I'll hold it up here.
Okay.
The canopy will be receiving a mansard roof, will be a shingled roof,
Okay.
which has been in keeping with a lot of the recent service station developments. We know the town likes something a little bit better than just the standard vanilla box.
Right.
Also in keeping with the town's requirements, there are no colors or signage proposed on this canopy. Now, it is also noted that the Hess station across the street does have signs on their canopy. However, we do understand that canopy was existing from
Right.
long before that regulation existed. The building is proposed to have a similarly sloped roof with asphaltic shingles on it. It's not a flat roof building. And on the outside of the building, it's a very, very rich and a very ornate type of proposal where there's actual precast concrete base located at the bottom, brick siding, actual real brick siding along the three walls of the building, and then on the corners will be precast coins with pilasters that stick out from the outside of the building. Just a word of note with BOLA, they have constructed this facility, the same type of facility in several other areas. Most notably, and I'm not sure that the board would be familiar with it, I didn't bring it with me tonight, but on Route 347 in Mount Sinai, they just constructed one of their new facilities.
Okay.
And it has a very, really almost identical look to what we are proposing here. And arguably, we are, in my humble opinion, as the applicant's engineer, going to do a far better job than Hess has done in terms of the aesthetics on this building. In terms of the interior of the building, granite, mahogany woods. The bathrooms themselves are made completely of granite and marble. I would invite everybody to come by after it is built and marvel at the investment that BOLA is making in this facility. It is truly state-of-the-art. Thank you.
Okay. I'll entertain anyone. Is there anyone like to be heard on this application? All right.
Madam Chairwoman, if we
Yes.
could just respond to some of Mr. Flynn's comments, I would
Of course.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Do you want to do a traffic study?
Madam Chairwoman, much was
Could I
made
have
by
the Senate?
this town's planning department during the change of zone application regarding what I'll call perceived traffic impacts. They were, in my opinion, unfounded. The applicant, during the change of zone application, did in fact cause to be prepared and submitted a traffic and parking study. I have additional copies of that traffic and parking study with me here this evening, and I'm going to ask that they be submitted into the record. They're prepared by Stonefield Engineering and Design. They've been updated and are dated April 25, 2013. I'm going to submit those into the record.
Thank you. Okay. Let me give this to
Toward that end, Madam Chairwoman, I also have with me here this evening Matt Seckler from Stonefield Engineering. He is a traffic engineer. I'm going to ask him to make a few comments when both Chris and I are done responding to Mr. Flynn's comments. In addition, Mr. Flynn noted the
I'll
July 22nd letter from the New York State Department of Transportation, which made issue particularly a comment 2 of their letter with respect to the applicant's proposed site access. There's one curb cut proposed on Route 111 and one on Route 347. As Mr. Tartaglia noted, applicant currently proposes right in and right out on both. DOT, in their comment letter, would like to restrict access to right in only on 111 and right out only on 347. With all due respect to the planning department, the comment raised by DOT is both legally inappropriate and really has no bearing on the determination with respect to the variances at issue before this board tonight. Ultimately, it may be an issue with respect to site plan approval, should we get that far, but it doesn't have any bearing here this evening. And toward that end, Madam Chairwoman, I had prepared a detailed written response to the DOT's comment letter, which is dated August 2nd of 2013. I'm also going to submit copies of my letter and the attachments thereto into the record. I would just like to note for the record, Madam Chairwoman, the property, as we originally indicated when I first made my initial comments, is owned by two separate entities, the northern portion being owned by one entity, and obviously the south portion where the former gasoline filling station existed owned by another. To deprive, or to do what DOT has done would essentially deprive the owners of the property of vehicular access, arguably illegal and not permitted. And I don't believe that they have the right to do that as a condition, whether or not these parcels are being used jointly as is proposed in the current instance. With respect to Mr. Flynn's comment regarding the proximity of the parking stalls to the 347 curb cut, I'll ask Mr. Tartaglia to address that.
Thanks, David. And we acknowledge Mr. Flynn's comments, and this is certainly something that we are willing to discuss. And one of the things that I do not foresee as being a problem is if one of the stalls is deemed too close by planning to that curb cut, we have ample opportunity to move that stall somewhere else on the property. So we welcome the discussion with planning on that site design issue. I would note, though, however, that the location of that stall complies with code. I just have a couple other clarifications. Mr. Flynn mentioned that there are 16 pumps and that most other stations have 4 to 6. I just want to clarify, we have 8 pump islands, not 16. 16 is the fueling positions. Just want to make a clarification because 16 and 8 are very different numbers. With regard to the DOT memo and the request from planning to the board to not either hear or decide on the application, what I would say is, or what I just want to reinforce with the board, which I mentioned in my previous testimony, the back and forth with DOT on comments is common. Every application on a state highway goes back and forth with DOT for comments. Our first comment letter from DOT was the one requesting this prohibition of access. We have responded. As I mentioned earlier, we await a meeting with DOT later in the month. Based upon our traffic engineer's information, based upon our experience with site design, and based upon the DOT's own reconstruction of this intersection and reestablishing the lights and the turning lanes and the cycling times, we are confident that we will be able to secure approval for access as we need it. But all that said, none of the variances before you will be impacted if DOT rules as they've currently ruled. So the request to have you delay your decision or your review of this application is completely unfounded. The variances will not change if the direction arrow painted on the driveway changes. Thank you.
Okay. I think we should close.
Madam
the meeting.
Chairwoman, before I ask Mr. Seckler to come up here and make a few comments with respect to some of the traffic issues raised by planning, I just want to note for the record that the applicant is also caused to be prepared a real estate study in connection with the application, prepared by Lynch Appraisals Ltd., dated October 8th, 2013. Mike Lynch is here this evening, and if you have any questions with respect to Mr. Lynch's study, I'm happy to have him come and answer any questions you may have. I'll just simply read into the record the conclusory paragraph of his report, which states, in consideration of the carefully planned redevelopment of the property, as well as the well-established character of the surrounding neighborhood, the requested special exception and variances from the neighborhood business zoning district will not result in any undesirable changes to the character of the area, nor will it adversely affect nearby property values. The benefit to the applicant outweighs any detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood. If approved, the requested variance will result in a modern, updated facility that will be a substantial upgrade to the property itself and the surrounding community. And I'll submit copies of the report into the record as well. With that, I'll ask Mr. Seckler to make his comments.
May I have your name and address, please?
Yes. Good evening, Madam Chairwoman. My name is Matthew Seckler. I'm from Stonefield Engineering and Design. Our address is 1601 Vets Highway, Islandia, New York, 11749. The last name is Seckler.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Yes, I'm just responding to Mr. Flynn's comment regarding the trip generation and intensity due to this use. ITE produces a handbook and manual regarding the projected number of trips any particular site or use may generate. This is based on numerous studies throughout the United States. One thing they do also include is they recognize that certain uses are located on busy roadways that draw in traffic that exist on the roadways today. For instance, if you were commuting on 347, you would come into this site and then leave the site. This is known as a pass-by trip. Like I said, this gas station with convenience stores located on these roadways to draw off the existing traffic. It's not like a movie theater. It's not like an amusement park where people come from all around to go to this use. It's a gas station, as we heard. There's even a Hess, right up the road. ITE understands that these uses aren't generators of new trips to the network. ITE conservatively estimates 62% of all trips in the morning will be made by cars that are already on the road today, even before this use is built. In the evening, it's about 56%. So like I said, the majority of people using this gas station are already on the road today with this being a vacant site. So the impact to the roadway is minimal. Just to give you some numbers, the number of new vehicles we expect to be using this gas station in the morning is approximately 32 vehicles in the morning. This overall intersection generates approximately 4,000 vehicles in an hour. And this is going to generate, again, 31 vehicles an hour. You're talking about less than 1% of the total vehicles on this roadway will be new trips coming to this site. It's a very minimal impact. And if you read the traffic report, which obviously you haven't had a chance to fully read yet, you will see we performed highway capacity manual standard evaluation of the signal, and we found that there was no detrimental impact to the roadway network based on these trips. Again, just the evening, we're looking at between 48 new vehicles on the roadway that will be coming to this site, and you have over 4,700 vehicles an hour traveling through this intersection. So again, it's a very minimal increase, and I think our traffic study speaks for itself that the impacts to the roadway are minimal. In addition, the curb cuts that we've located, one on 347 and one on 111, are located as far from the traffic signal as possible and still being on our property. That's a good access management procedure, as well as the movements in and out, being a right turn in and a right turn out. These are the safest, most efficient movements that you could realize at a driveway. These aren't, left turns. You tend to have to wait for longer gaps. Some people may gun it. Right turns, it's very easy in and easy out. In fact, this site, being where it's located and being a gas station, is very well suited for this location. The fact that it could take in, right out movements. It doesn't require access from northbound on 111. It's a very well-suited site for this use. I think that answered the questions.
Gentlemen, I think we should close the hearing. What do you think? Okay. Okay, thank you so much. All right. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Really moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. David, did you know there was a traffic stop? We're going to use that. Okay. Here you go. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. I'm going to keep a traffic study to read. No, I have a traffic study I want to read. Is this a traffic study? Yeah.
My ass is so
Okay.
ready from sitting.
What?
It's the toast.
Yeah.
Is it?
You know,
Nitrate free?
You have nothing else to do, guys. You can read the traffic study in bed.
Why can't you have nitrates? You're allergic to it? Ah.
You laugh. I mean, why would I?
Yeah, that was painful. Wow. Okay. Madam Chair, the next case on the agenda, number 16998, Nicole Farantelli, 37 Dorchester Road, Smithtown. Location, west side of Dorchester Road, 560 feet north of Cortlandt Row. The property is zoned R15. The applicant requests a variance to permit environmentally sensitive land, depth of groundwater less than 10 feet to be altered, increase maximum gross floor area of lot from 25 to 100% for a 1,393 square foot second floor addition. The FAR would be 24% without the environmentally sensitive land. Reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 15 feet existing. Reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 60 feet to 57 feet existing to expand a lawful non-conforming structure due to setbacks.
Good evening. My name is Charles Kuhn, architect.
I need the applicant first.
Okay.
Thank
Hello.
you.
Hi.
May I have your name, please?
Nicole Farantelli,
And your address, Nicole.
37 Dorchester Road.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Now, would you like this gentleman to speak for you?
I would.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Charles Kuhn, architect.
Spell your last name?
Yes, Kuehn. Business address, P.O. Box 641, Northport, New York.
Okay, raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. We're here tonight basically to present an application for a second floor addition. The second floor addition will be 1,393 square feet. With the existing building and an accessory shed in the back, the FAR actually is going to be 23.6%. With respect to the side yard of 15 feet, it's 15 feet 15.6 foot existing side yard, so we would only be requiring a 0.4 foot, which is approximately 5-inch side yard relief. With respect to the rear yard, I think you mentioned it's an existing setback. The portion of the addition, we actually have a 74-foot 6-inch rear yard setback to the proposed addition. So the 57-foot is actually to an existing part of the house. With respect to, I guess, the environmental issues, we are not proposing any expansion of the footprint of the house, so therefore we would have no foundation work as part of this application. I know there was a request for a test boring. We're a little confused because there's going to be absolutely no foundation work on this application. We're not really sure what the need for a test boring would be.
Well, that's what the environmental department is asking for, is a test hole, and they will not give us a secret until you do that test hole. So I don't know, Mr. Flynn, do you, I guess.
I would think that if the applicant or Mr. Kuhn thinks that it's illogical or irrational, that they really need to contact the Department of Environment and Waterways directly and ask if it's applicable, if the requirement's really applicable here.
Okay, absolutely.
Okay.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Good.
Basically, the 5-point undesirable, we feel that the addition is in keeping in character of the neighborhood. There are many homes in the area that are two-story. This is currently a ranch-style house. Alternate solution, we have designed the addition to be conforming except for the 5-inch side yard setback. The thought was basically to keep the side wall over the existing, so we don't feel it's a unreasonable request. Substantial impact, we don't feel the 5-inch setback relief is going to be substantial in a 16-foot required setback. We don't feel it's going to be an adverse impact on the property since we're not increasing the footprint of the house. We're not disturbing any of the grounds. This is purely a second floor addition, so we don't feel it's a adverse impact to the property. Self-created, the existing rear yard and side yard setbacks are existing, so we did not create them, although we are asking for basically to maintain an existing setback. And I believe that's about our case. If you have any questions?
Planning?
Just one comment for the board. The zoning requirement that restricts development because of groundwater is intended to reduce pollution to the groundwater and to reduce groundwater flooding. As you know, a large portion of the town, particularly close to this area, has experienced groundwater flooding problems off and on since 1979.
Right.
The theory is that the more rooms a house has, the more wastewater that's generated, and the wastewater gets generated on site. I would recommend that you wait for a recommendation from the Department of Environment and Waterways to see whether or not there is a significant environmental impact in this regard.
I'd like to address that. We are actually eliminating we're adding a bedroom for the second floor addition, but we're eliminating a bedroom on the ground floor. Therefore, we're not increasing the number of bedrooms at all on the property.
Okay. Okay. You know there's no decision tonight.
Fair
Okay.
enough.
All right. Gentlemen, anything else? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Have a good night.
So Good night. moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Got it?
All right, wait a minute.
Madam Chair, the next case on the agenda, number 16999, Frank and Amy Giardina, 15 Sunny Road, St. James. Location southeast corner of Sunny Road and Oak Street. The property is zoned R21. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the minimum side yard from 16 to 8 feet for a proposed 480 square foot detached garage.
Okay. May I have your name, please?
Amy Giardina,
And your address, Amy.
15 Sunny Road, St. James.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you like this gentleman to speak for you?
Yes.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Todd O'Connell, TOC Architects, located doing business at 1200 Veterans Highway, Hauppauge, New York.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
This particular application is a corner piece of property, and what Amy would like to do is to have a two-car garage next to her house. The style of the garage is going to have, one story, meet the height requirements of the town. It is going to have a hip-style roof to match the character of the home itself. So we feel it's going to be within keeping of not only her house, but also many other houses in the surrounding neighborhood. Being that this is a corner lot, the location of the garage becomes a bit of an issue that we have to contend with. The garage would have to be in the rear yard, opposite Oak Street. If this was considered the rear yard, it wouldn't need a variance because I'm allowed to have an accessory structure 8 foot from the property line. But because of where the driveway is, this was the most practical location to put the garage. But with the town code, it actually classifies it as a side yard. As a side yard, I have to meet the building envelope of the house. The accessory structure does not apply in this case. To put the garage in the rear portion of the property itself, on that side of the house where the driveways are and the curb cut is, would be a problem for Amy because she's not looking to get rid of her pool. She's not looking to, have to mobilize all the way into the rear yard to access the garage. She's looking for, the cars to be as close to her front entrance as absolutely possible. She uses the garage, she likes to keep the cars, off the street. So to keep the garage in the location it is and close to the entrance of her home is imperative for the way she likes to live. So we felt that this application was the best one to put before this board, and also, with what my client's needs are. Of course, there, are other solutions, but none that really made sense to either myself or Amy in this case. I don't feel it's going to have an undesirable effect, to the surrounding neighborhood. We feel it's, again, within keeping. There's no negative environmental impact, and we understand that this variance may, in its wording, appear to be, a 50% relief, but again, if it is a corner lot, and if this was the rear yard, I wouldn't need a variance. I wouldn't be here. It's just the corner lot, the rules, are kind of a little bit unique to a regular interior lot. So that would conclude my case, and love to answer any questions or that this board may have.
All right, my question is, why do you have 11 feet between the garage and the house? Why couldn't that garage be moved closer to the house?
It probably could be moved closer to the house, but we don't want the garage to feel like it's attached to the house. We want to create some sort of a buffer between the house and the garage itself, where you could actually be able to mobilize through. New York State actually requires 10 foot between the two structures as one of their new codes. So could you get it a little bit closer? Yes, but we felt 8 foot was, an accessory structure code, and being, it is an accessory structure, we felt that that would not be an unreasonable request.
Okay, planning?
The board has approved other structures, some even 0 feet away. Any explanation on how other ones can be closer if the state requires 10 feet?
From the house
between
itself?
an accessory building and the main building.
If it can be closer if you want to fire rate the entire garage.
I see. Thank you.
Gentlemen, any other questions?
No. No question.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Really moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
Madam Chair, the next case, number 17000, Kevin and Patricia Martin, 10 Pine Ridge Drive in Smithtown. The location is the west side of Pine Ridge Drive, 131 feet south of MacArthur Lane. The property is zoned R21. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the minimum setback of a retaining wall from the property line from 3 feet to 2 feet, permit environmentally sensitive land, slopes in excess of 15% to be altered, permit structures within 10 feet of environmentally sensitive land. Got it?
My name's Kevin Martin. Last name is Martin.
And your address, Kevin?
10 Pine Ridge Drive, Smithtown, New York.
Okay. Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
We are here today, my wife and I, to request a variance, to reiterate what the gentleman said. 1, to reduce the minimum required setback of a retaining wall from the property line from 3 feet to 2 feet 4 inches. Secondly, to permit environmentally sensitive land to be altered. And third, to permit structures within 10 feet of any slope higher than 15%. According to my engineer, he stated that the walls are structurally sound, competent, and he also stated that the walls will not adversely affect my surrounding neighbor's property.
Just a second. Can you hear him?
Sure.
You have to speak a little bit louder, all right? Thank you
Yeah.
for that.
Reiterate, you want me to say that again?
Yes, please.
According to my engineer, he stated that the walls are structurally competent and sound, and secondly, that they do not adversely affect my surrounding neighbor's property. And his name is Michael Williams.
Planning? Gentlemen? Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second?
Regularly moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, the next case on the agenda, 17,002 Richard Muscolino, 17 Kim Avenue, Smithtown. Location, east side of Kim Avenue, 290 feet south of Tower Place. The property is zoned R15. The applicant requests a variance to permit environmentally sensitive land, depth to groundwater less than 10 feet to be altered, reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 60 feet to 42 feet for an existing 225 square foot porch.
Good evening, members of the board.
Yeah, have your name,
Madam
please?
Chair, Christina Aiello, A-I-E-L-L-O,
And what are you?
agent for the applicant. I have power of attorney.
May I see the
Over here.
It's
You have-
enclosed.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mhm, That's okay.
It's fine. Okay.
With Morano Expediting. It's 4 Hamilton Court, Quorum.
Okay, raise your right hand, please. You swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes. Okay, we're requesting permission to maintain a 12-foot 2-inch by 18-foot 4-inch screened porch holding a 42-foot rear yard setback instead of the required 60 feet. This difficulty was not self-created, as the home itself was built holding only a 54-foot rear yard setback, and therefore does not conform to the code. We require a variance for any alteration in the rear yard. It's very well screened from the neighboring properties, does not create a detriment to the area. The porch was originally built in 1985, but it was damaged by Hurricane Sandy and repaired in 2013, at which point the homeowner was told by the contractor that they would pull all the permits, and we came to find out that they did not. They are actually planning to put the house on the market, which is how they found out that there were no permits. A real estate agent asked them to provide permits for the structure, and they were unable to obtain those from the town. This is not out of character for the area. The board approved a variance in June of 2013 for 22 Kim Avenue, which is located directly across from this subject property. And it was granted to hold a 42-foot rear yard setback for a proposed sunroom addition. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
But let me just tell you, the same thing is happening to you, as the environmental department will not make a decision on you unless you submit a test hole.
Okay.
So if you have a problem with that, you'll have to talk with them.
We'll contact them directly.
Okay. So there's no decision tonight?
Correct.
Okay. All right?
Thank you.
All right. Planning?
No comments, thanks.
Gentlemen?
No, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain the motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second?
Regularly moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Oh, I don't know what this belongs to.
Oh, okay. Madam Chair, the next case, number 17,003, Brian and Akama Parker, 150 50-acre Road South, Smithtown. Location, west side of 50-acre Road South, 87 feet south of Marquette Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 50 to 39 feet for an existing 547 square foot addition, increase the maximum paving in the front yard from 25% to 35% existing.
Again, let me have your name and address.
Christina Aiello, Morano Expediting, 4 Hamilton Court, Quorum, agent for the applicant.
Okay, you've been sworn in, so.
Okay, thank you. We are requesting permission to maintain a roofed-over patio, which was converted to living space, holding a 39-foot rear yard setback instead of the required 50 feet. And we're also requesting permission to increase the maximum allowed paved front yard from 25% to 35%. With regard to the patio conversion, the original roofed-over patio was CO'd in August of 1979. It was converted to living space in 2013. The 39-foot setback is actually measured to the bay window, and which is what encroaches furthest into the rear yard. The majority of the room is holding a 41.8-foot setback. This setback is not uncommon to the area. We have pulled an aerial photo which shows that most of the homes in the area hold similar setbacks. With regard to the driveway, this was widened in 2010. I've submitted 10 photographs of homes within this East Hills area, approximately a 300-foot radius, which show that the homes have similar, if not larger size, widened driveways. So therefore, this is not out of character for the area and does not create an adverse effect or impact on any of the surrounding homes. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
First of all, let me tell you, do you know if these have variances?
We did not find any variances. We were unable to pull that information.
Well,
but we just wanted to prove that it's not uncommon to the area.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, if you don't know if they are in, they have COs, so you don't know if these houses have variances at all. And the other thing is, you need to take these back, if you don't mind, and you have to give me the address of every one of these homes.
Some of the houses don't have numbers posted on them, so we were unable to determine the house number. It's true. You could see in the photograph there were no house numbers.
Yeah.
But we could I could research it a little further and resubmit.
Yeah, I mean, or at least the street number or something. The street. You don't even have the street name on these.
We did submit some photographs that were taken by the homeowner himself, so we did not obtain the street name from him.
I don't think they can be submitted. What do you think? Like, just can't. Yeah, we're not going to consider them.
Okay.
Okay.
A suggestion, it might be helpful to submit to the board a little map that depicts these and which one is, let's just say 40% and which one's 30% and so on. That way there's a numerical way of knowing whether it's a characteristic of the neighborhood or an anomaly to have a lot of paving. You know, typically what the board would do in some situations where, let's say, a lot is undersized, an applicant would just submit a character map and color in the properties that deviate from the town's requirement, and the person would make a little table and say, lot 4, the pavement is 32% and so on, and the lot number 11, the pavement is 50%. So that way there's a feeling, or not a feeling, there's a quantity to the feeling.
Okay.
I'm not saying...
The only problem I see is assuming she's not going to do that in the next 5 minutes. If we close the hearing, she can't submit it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should just do it on the merit, what's in front of us, and not consider these these at all.
Well, we were just trying to prove that within this neighborhood, the majority of the homes did possess this type of driveway. So it was not uncommon to the area.
You might just be better suited submitting that verbally rather than submitting pictures that we can't use to consider.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Do you have any additional questions? Be happy to answer them.
I don't think so.
Madam Chair, one thing I would say is that the requirement in the ordinance has a few purposes, one of which is to try to reduce flooding. And it's been in the news, and perhaps it's statistically true, that storms are worsening. And the more impermeable surface area there is in the town, the more flooding there will be in the future. And if the board were to grant this, we would recommend that you put a condition on that the additional stormwater be contained on the property with a dry well or whatever method works for the applicant and the town engineer. You know, in other words, the recharge basins were designed, in this development, they were designed, I'm not sure, this one might have been in the 1980s, and there was a certain, what they call a runoff coefficient. And that was based on certain amounts of roof and pavement areas. And I think, as you may be aware, the amount of pavement has been increasing the same time that storm severity has been increasing. And people sometimes complain about flooding. Well, one way to reduce it is to try to get people to keep the stormwater on their own properties.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, gentlemen?
No, that's.
Okay,
That's it. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Really moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carried.
Got it.
Do you want these pictures back? Thank you.
Madam Chair, the next case, number 17,004, PJ Venture, 4 Henry Street, Comac. Location of the property is the southeast corner of Henry Street and Crooked Hill Road. The property is zoned SCB. The applicant requests a variance to increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 to 25 feet, increase the maximum height of a wall sign from 15 to 22 feet, permit a wall sign above another wall sign, permit 2 wall signs for an establishment that is not located on the first floor.
Let me have your name, please,
John Baker,
and your address, John.
15 Wyandanch Boulevard, Smithtown.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Good evening. I'm here tonight for 2 sign variances on a building that's currently occupied by Sleepy's and Guitar Center. There's a second floor been added to that structure. The structure remained the same. The 2 second-floor tenants, Joanne's and Kidsville, we'd like to place both those signs above their entrance, above the new entrance to serve that second floor. The one sign for Joanne's would top out at 25 feet, and I believe the sign for Kidsville, it top out at about 22 feet. Those signs proposed are typical within PJ Ventures property on Crooked Hill Road. All the signs in that project are approximately ranging in at 22 to 23 feet.
I'm just curious. Was there something there before Joanne's was there?
No.
No?
That Sleepy's Guitar building is identical to the building that houses Home Goods and Marshalls.
Mm-hmm.
Just we added, the steel was always in the building. We just poured the floor and added the tenants.
Okay. Planning?
Planning would recommend approval. The request is substantial. However, there'd really be no impact. If you look at where this building faces, it doesn't front on a road in the normal sense of the word. The nearest normal public highway is Crooked Hill Road, and it's about 500 feet away. Also, from an alternative standpoint, if the applicant complied with the ordinance with respect to height, in all honesty, if you look at the rendering, I think it would look sort of silly. It would look funny to have this sign different from the other signs. So I would just basically wanted the, if you approve it, the record to reflect that this isn't a typical situation. This is a shopping center with an enormous setback and a number of buildings on the property.
Thank you, Peter. Anyone else? Okay, thank you so much. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Madam Chair, the next case, number 17,005, Jared Morrissey, 5 Platt Avenue, Smithtown. Location of southeast corner of Vassar Place and Platt Avenue. The property is zoned R10. The applicant requests a variance to reduce the minimum front yard setback on Platt Avenue from 40 feet to 33 feet, 38 feet existing, and side yard setback from 12 feet to 8 feet, 10 feet existing, for a proposed 44-square-foot portico. Reduce the minimum front yard setback on Vassar Place from 40 feet to 15 feet, 21 feet existing, for a proposed 48-square-foot deck. Reduce distance to any lot line from 2 feet to 0 for existing 96-square-foot shed. Increase the maximum paving in front yard from 25 to 40%.
Good evening. I've submitted a power of attorney.
Okay?
Good evening. My name is Michael Morbillo. I am the architect for the applicant. My office is located at 1650 Sycamore Avenue in Bohemia, New York. Madam Chairman, members of the board, the application, yes,
Raise your
I'm
right hand.
sorry.
Do you
Thank you.
swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you.
Thank you.
The application before you this evening is primarily for the addition of a small front porch on the front of an existing high ranch residence. The front porch measures approximately 5.8 by 8.8 feet. It is being placed over an existing masonry stoop that's an open stoop with no roof, so we're proposing a roof on that. The other part of this application is for a small side yard, small front yard terrace, which is on the side, the left side of the high ranch, or the north side of the high ranch, and that measures approximately 5.4 feet by approximately 13 feet. The purpose of, I'm going to start with the deck. The purpose of the deck is primarily to gain access to the main yard of the residence. If you folks you're probably familiar with a high ranch, you come up half level, almost a full level, to the main living space and the kitchen, living and dining area are towards the front of the house, and then there's 3 bedrooms towards the back. To get to the rear, to the side yard, which is the largest yard here, where the children play, they have to go down through the first floor and go through a side door on the opposite side of the house, or they have to go through the front yard, out the front door, and then across the driveway to a gate to the side yard. So primarily they're just trying to create a minimal access, a minimal deck that's going to be open. It's not going to have a roof over it, and the part that's protruding the most into the front yard is basically a platform created for steps to get down from this terrace. The existing front yard setback is 21.6 feet. In order to create this small deck and stairs, we're going to be reducing it to 15.5 feet. It's not a substantial request over what's existing, but relative to the current setback requirements, front yard setback requirements, it's relatively substantial. The request for the front porch is consistent with applications before this board. It's primarily going to be an open front porch. We are actually encroaching 1.2 feet, which has been rounded up to 2 feet for the application. So right now the present house is 10 feet off of the side line, and we're asking for 8 feet off the sideline. Primarily that's to accommodate a couple of columns, one on one side, one on the other, which is encroaching into that area for the roofed over open front porch. The remainder of the application is for an existing shed that was on the property at the time of purchase, and it's just a matter of inches over the property line, but it is an existing shed, and since they were making the other requests, that's come into this application. The other part is to increase the paving in the front yard from 25% to 40%. Again, due to the size of the property, which is, I'll say is substandard, it's 0.125, excuse me, 1.127 acres. I think it's a common type of variance when you have these smaller lots that you start exceeding the front yard paving. Primarily, it's an existing driveway. It accommodates about 3 vehicles right now, and so they're looking to bring that into conformance. And neither of these or none of these requests are going to affect the character of the neighborhood, being that they're not, roofed over structures. They're low level. They're more site improvements than actual structures being added, and they're accessory to the main structure, which is remaining unaffected. The requests do not have an adverse effect on the environment, although somewhat substantial relative to the standards of the property. Relative to the property size, they're not substantial. And my client has no other means of doing this. He's looking for some stairs off a living space. He's looking upon a front porch. There's only so many places I can go. So if the board has any questions at this time, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Planning?
Just 2 things, Madam Chair. We would recommend approval of the paving, even though the request is substantial. If the person wanted to, if the application were denied, they could put another driveway in the other yard, and I think that would have more impact, the other front yard, more impact than the grant of the variance. Then the second thing is one of the intentions of the zoning ordinance was to permit enough paving in front yards so that people could have 2-car driveways. That works for normal quarter-acre lots, but it doesn't work for this. So they're basically want to have it or want to keep, whatever, want to have a driveway 2 cars wide. One thing I would note, if the board does approve this, we would recommend that it be approved with a condition that the fence, the stockade fence, be moved onto the property. I see it's on public property on Vassar Place.
We would agree to that condition.
Okay. Gentlemen? Okay. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, can I close it? I have. All right. Yeah. Is there anyone here that would like to be heard on this application? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to close the hearing.
So moved. Second.
Rayleigh moving second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we need to take a break, please?